I started to hear laughter through the walls, sometimes my own voice, sometimes the voice of someone else. At night, I saw a figure sitting at the edge of my bed, unmoving, watching me through the vent. I see shapes moving in the dark, soft thuds in the floorboards.
You are listening to the Fearcast. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill.
I don't know when the house first noticed me. I only know when I noticed it. My name is Amelia. I had been house hunting for months, desperate for a place I could afford when I found the listing. A 2-story countryside home, abandoned for decades, but still standing. The price was impossibly cheap, and when I asked the agent why no one had bought it, he just smiled thinly and said, "Some houses don't want to be lived in." I thought it was a joke. The house sat at the end of a narrow road, surrounded by dead trees and tall grass, its windows dark and hollow like sunken eyes. When I turned the key, the front door creaked open before I could even touch it, as though it had been waiting for me. The house was silent, stale, and cold. Still, it was mine, or so I thought. I spent the first week scrubbing, unpacking, and repairing old fixtures. It wasn't until the 7th night that I heard the tapping through the bedroom vent. At first, I told myself it was just an animal in the ductwork, but the taps grew rhythmic and deliberate, like something was trying to signal me. The next night, it wasn't tapping, it was breathing, shallow, wheezing, coming from the vent. I shone a flashlight down the shaft, but saw nothing but darkness. I tried to dismiss it, but the breathing followed me from room to room. No matter where I slept, I heard it always closer. On the 3rd night, I heard a child's voice whisper through the vent, "Don't come downstairs, he's still here." I called the police, but they found no signs of forced entry. I started sleeping on the couch, covering the vents with towels, but the whispers and the breathing always returned. On the 10th night, I found muddy footprints leading from the basement door to the living room vent. The basement lock was broken. I descended, flashlight in hand, and found a cavernous space far larger than the house should allow. The walls were lined with old furniture and boxes of decayed clothing. In the corner, I found small sweaters, shoes, and coats neatly arranged, like someone had laid them out carefully. I turned to leave, but I heard the voice again, this time right behind me. "You shouldn't be here. He's still downstairs." I ran, pushing a cabinet against the basement door, and called my friend Lauren to stay over. That night, we both heard the footsteps, heavy and dragging, circling beneath us from room to room. The breathing came through the taped-over vents. The whispers grew louder. "He's here. He's here. He's here." At one point, we heard soft humming coming through the vent, an old nursery rhyme that neither of us could place. Lauren fled the next morning and refused to return. I couldn't blame her. The next day, I heard the same rhyme playing faintly from my phone, even though no app was open. I tried to ignore it, but the sound followed me throughout the house, faintly echoing from inside the walls. Desperate for answers, I learned from the county clerk that the house had been condemned years ago and wasn't supposed to be sold. She told me quietly, "Some houses don't forget, sometimes they make new ones." I bought wood, cement, and tools to seal the basement for good. But as I worked, I felt the house watching me. The air grew unnaturally cold. I heard soft footsteps behind me, bare feet shuffling closer. When I turned, the hall was empty, but the plywood I'd prepared to seal the door was gone and stacked neatly in the living room. Determined, I locked myself inside the house and stayed awake all night against the basement door. In the morning, I found it wide open again and a note written in dirt on the kitchen table, "Come downstairs." That night, I heard a new sound, a quiet scratching at the bedroom door. The breathing had grown louder. It wasn't just in the vents anymore. I forced myself to open the door, expecting an intruder, but I found nothing but a wet trail leading toward the basement. I forced myself to go back down. The basement was colder, the air thick with damp earth. I smashed open the nearest vent with a crowbar and discovered a hidden passage. It twisted in impossible directions, far deeper than the house should allow. I crawled through the suffocating tunnel until I reached a hollow room lined with children's stick figure drawings, each with dark scribbled faces and hollow circles for eyes. In the center sat a skeletal man in a wooden chair, his skin pale, his mouth slack, and on his lap a decayed doll, its head tilted and broken. From the vent above me, I heard the child's voice again. "He's been waiting for you." I turned to leave, but the crawl space had vanished. The walls were now smooth stone, and there was no way out. The whisper from the vent returned. "He's part of the house now. You will be too." I pounded on the walls, screaming until I heard my own voice echoing through the vents above, pleading to be let out from somewhere else in the house. The walls didn't answer, but I felt the house breathe around me, exhaling through the hollow places. I woke up hours later in my bedroom, the vent grate hanging loose, muddy footprints circling my bed. I tried to flee, but the front door wouldn't open, and the windows wouldn't break. I called Lauren, but she told me I'd already called her yesterday, and that I'd said I didn't know anyone named Amelia. I found that I no longer appeared in the mirrors. When I tried to draw my reflection, I couldn't remember my own face. I saw things moving behind me that shouldn't have been there. The house was sealing me in, piece by piece. I started to hear laughter through the walls, sometimes my own voice, sometimes the voice of someone else. At night, I saw a figure sitting at the edge of my bed, unmoving, watching me through the vent. I see shapes moving in the dark, soft thuds in the floorboards, echoes of footsteps that don't belong to me. I wait by the vent now, hoping someone will move in soon, hoping they'll hear me. Because the house is looking for someone new. But the house isn't just looking, it's preparing. Over the last few nights, the hallways have been changing. I've counted more doors than there should be, some leading to impossible rooms, small square chambers with walls that pulse as if breathing, rooms where the ceiling stretches impossibly high and disappears into black. I've found tiny beds with dusty sheets and small chairs tucked neatly beneath them, as if children had just left moments before I arrived. Sometimes I hear the soft clink of teacups, as if a gathering is taking place in those rooms just beyond the walls. I've found entire rooms filled with items I never owned: a small pink bicycle, a child's drawing of a family that isn't mine, dusty boxes with photographs of strangers whose faces are scratched out. Sometimes I see movement in those rooms, someone else moving in the distance, walking the same halls as me, wearing the same clothes, but never turning to face me. I've started hearing knocking from inside the walls, not tapping, knocking, urgent, desperate, like someone trying to get out. I knocked back once, something knocked in response, and then I heard my own voice, quiet, shaking, whispering from the other side. Let me out. I don't know which version of me is trapped now. I don't know which of me is still real. I just know the house is hungry, and it's still growing, folding new rooms into itself, stealing people's reflections, replacing them one by one. The last time I heard Lauren's voice, it came from a room that didn't exist when I moved in. She said, "I found a door. I think it leads outside." But when I opened the same door from my side, all I saw was the basement, wet, dark, breathing. I closed the door and the room vanished. I don't know where Lauren is now, but I know I can still hear her footsteps moving in the walls, getting closer to my side. I think the house is waiting for her to find me, or maybe it's waiting for me to find her. I don't know if I ever really left the basement. Maybe I never really left the hollow place. I see the hallway stretching longer each night, doors appearing where there were none, and strange objects left on the stairs, children's shoes, a cracked teacup, a small mirror with a face that isn't mine. I know I can't leave, but I'd love some company. If you ever move into a house with strange vents and doors that don't feel quite right, don't listen to the voices, don't follow the footsteps, and whatever you do, don't go downstairs. Because I'm still here, waiting, listening, and I know the house is hungry again. It's always hungry. And when you come to visit, I'll be waiting for you. I'll be the one whispering from the vents. You have reached a checkpoint. To save your progress, click the subscribe button.
I never planned to work the night shift at Hollow Creek Grocery. I had been searching for work for months when the manager, Mr. Greason, offered me the overnight stocker position. I was desperate, and even though his warning was strange, I ignored it. "Things get odd around here at night," he said, pushing his thick glasses up the bridge of his nose. "Just stick to your tasks, and don't go wandering into the freezer aisle after 2 a.m. I thought he was joking. A lot of stores had weird superstitions, but I took the job anyway. My name's Kevin, and after last night I wish I hadn't. My shift started like any other. Midnight to 8 a.m. Unload the truck, stock the shelves, clean up the aisles. Simple. The store was quiet, the fluorescent lights buzzing above me. I liked the silence. But that night, it didn't stay silent for long. At 1:07 a.m., I heard the first sound. It came from aisle 9, the frozen goods section. It was a slow, rhythmic tapping, like someone gently knocking on the glass freezer doors. I assumed it was a loose shelf, or maybe a defrost cycle making strange noises. I didn't think much of it. But the tapping didn't stop. It grew louder, more deliberate, like fingernails raking against glass. I pushed my cart closer, cautiously stepping into aisle 9. The aisle was empty. The sound stopped the second I entered. I scanned the freezers. Their glass doors were fogged from the cold, but there were no signs of cracks, no loose panels, nothing. Shrugging it off, I returned to my cart and continued stocking cereal in aisle 4. But as soon as I turned away, the tapping returned. This time, it was faster, urgent. My stomach tightened. I grabbed my radio and called Mark, the only other overnight worker. "Hey, Mark, you hear that tapping in Frozen?" His radio crackled. "No, man, I'm in the back room. Probably the compressor's acting up again." "Yeah, probably." I forced a laugh. "I'll check it later." I didn't plan to. By 2 a.m., the air in the store felt heavier. I found myself checking the clock constantly, counting down the minutes until my shift would end. That's when the lights in the produce section flickered. A low hum filled the air, growing louder, almost vibrating in my bones. I turned toward the hum and saw something that made me freeze. There was someone standing at the far end of the produce aisle, a tall figure in a pale green jacket. His back was to me, perfectly still, staring down at the display of apples. I couldn't make out his face, but something about him felt off. He didn't move like a normal person. His posture was too rigid, his head tilted just slightly to the side, as if listening to something I couldn't hear. "Sir?" I called out, my voice cracking. The figure didn't move. I approached slowly, heart thudding in my chest. "Sir, the store's closed. You can't be here." I took another step. The figure snapped its head toward me. There was no face, just smooth, pale skin stretched tight where features should be. No eyes, no mouth, no nose, just skin. I stumbled backward, knocking over a basket of oranges. The figure remained still, head turned unnaturally toward me. Then, with a sudden jolt, it sprinted into aisle 9 and vanished from sight. I grabbed my radio. "Mark, there's someone in the store. I think he's dangerous." Mark didn't answer. I radioed again. "Mark, are you there?" Silence. I sprinted to the back room, my shoes squeaking on the polished floor. The storage door was ajar, the light flickering inside. I pushed it open and called out, "Mark." No response. His cart was still there, partially stocked with cleaning supplies, but Mark was gone. I checked the receiving door, still locked. No sign of forced entry. Panic set in. That's when I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. The rhythmic knocking echoed from the freezer aisle. I should have left. I should have run straight out the front doors, but I couldn't leave Mark behind. I followed the sound back into the store. As I reached aisle 9, the air temperature dropped. My breath fogged in front of me. The tapping continued, now faster, as if whatever was making the sound was growing impatient. I rounded the corner and stopped. Every freezer door was wide open. Packages of frozen meals and vegetables were strewn across the floor, as if something had torn through the shelves in a hurry. The tapping had stopped, replaced by a faint, soft scraping coming from the end of the aisle. I inched closer, gripping the handle of my box cutter in my pocket. The scraping sound grew louder. It was coming from inside one of the walk-in freezers. The door was slightly ajar. Against every ounce of self-preservation, I pushed the door open. The freezer was empty except for the figure. It stood at the back, motionless, its faceless head tilted towards me again. But this time, it wasn't alone. Mark was there, standing beside it, his body stiff, his face expressionless, his eyes vacant. "Mark?" I whispered. He didn't respond. The figure raised one pale hand and pointed directly at me. I backed away, slamming the freezer door shut, locking the latch. I turned to run, but Mark's voice crackled over my radio. "You shouldn't have locked him in." I whipped around, expecting Mark to be behind me, but I was alone. I bolted toward the front entrance. The automatic doors didn't open. I slammed my shoulder against them, but they wouldn't budge. Over the store speakers, a voice echoed, distorted and mechanical. "You can't leave yet. Your shift isn't over." I spun around, searching for the source, but the speakers just hissed with static. "Mark?" I yelled into the radio. "Where are you? What's happening?" His voice returned, soft, almost mocking. "You should check aisle 3. I had no choice. When I reached aisle 3, I stopped cold. There were photographs pinned to the shelves, dozens of them. Photos of me, all taken inside the store. At different times throughout the night, me stocking shelves, me sweeping the floor, me staring at the clock. Photos I never took. Photos no one else could have taken. In the center of the aisle was a fresh, unopened roll of film. The store's PA system crackled again. "Keep working, the store's not closed." I ran to the office, desperate to find the security system. Maybe I could override the doors or call the police. The monitors were on, but the footage was wrong. Each screen showed a different aisle, but they were empty, no shelves, no products. Just endless rows of bare walls stretching into black corridors. Except for one screen, aisle 9. The freezer doors were open again, and Mark was standing there, staring directly into the security camera. His mouth moved. The speakers played his voice. "You need to finish your shift." I yanked the power cord from the wall, cutting the feed. Suddenly the store lights dimmed. The buzzing fluorescent bulbs flickered, plunging me into near darkness. Tap, tap, tap. The sound came from behind me. I turned slowly. The figure was there, halfway down the hallway, approaching with deliberate, mechanical steps. I sprinted out of the office, ducking into aisle 4. My breathing was ragged, panic surging through me. I needed to hide, but every aisle felt exposed. I crouched behind a cereal display, trying to steady my breath. The tapping grew louder. I heard footsteps pause at the end of the aisle, then Mark's voice, right behind me. "You don't get to leave. You're part of the store now." I spun around. No one was there. The intercom buzzed again. "Return to your station." The clock read 3:45 a.m., 15 more minutes. I sprinted to the front, slamming my fists against the door. "Let me out!" I screamed. "Please, just let me out!" The faceless figure emerged from aisle 2, slowly walking toward me, Mark trailing behind him. My radio crackled one last time. "You can't leave a shift unfinished." The clock struck 4 a.m. The front doors slid open with a soft chime. Without looking back, I bolted through the doors and didn't stop running until I reached my car. I drove home in silence, my pulse thundering in my ears. I called the store the next morning to quit, but the call didn't connect. I drove back during the day, only to find the building completely abandoned. Dusty, boarded up windows. The interior is stripped bare, as if the store had been closed for years. But as I walked back to my car, I noticed something wedged under my windshield wiper. It was a Polaroid, a photo of me taken from behind the register, working the night shift. Scrawled on the back in smudged ink, "See you tonight." I stayed locked in my apartment the next day, unable to focus on anything else. I replayed the night over and over again in my head, every sound, every word, the tapping, the freezer doors, Mark's voice. But the one thing I couldn't stop thinking about was the Polaroid left on my windshield. How? How could anyone have taken that photo when I was alone in the store? When I was trapped? When I was being hunted? I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I spent the day scrolling through every online article, news clipping, forum post, anything I could find about Hollow Creek Grocery. That's when I found something. There was a thread buried on an old message board from 6 years ago. A user had posted about the cursed grocery store on Hollow Creek. Other people had commented, sharing strange experiences, phantom sounds, mannequins that moved, disembodied footsteps. But one detail stood out. Every single person who worked the night shift mentioned a man named Mark. But in every story, Mark went missing. I scrolled further. Someone claimed that the store had been abandoned for years, condemned after a fire. But that couldn't be right. I was just there last night. The more I read, the more my stomach twisted. One post ended with a chilling sentence. "If you see Mark, it's already too late." By evening, despite my fear, I couldn't resist. I drove back to Hollow Creek Grocery. When I arrived, the building looked exactly as I had seen earlier. Windows boarded up, parking lot cracked and overgrown. No signs of life. But the automatic doors slid open the moment I approached, and the lights were on. Against every instinct screaming at me to turn back, I stepped inside. The store was exactly as I had left it, fully stocked, clean floors, working lights. It was like it had never closed. I checked the clock. Midnight. My shift had started. "You're late," Mark's voice buzzed over the intercom. I spun around, but no one was there. The radio in my pocket crackled to life. "Your cart in aisle 7. Get to work." I should have run. I should have gotten in my car and driven as far as I could, but I didn't. Something pulled me deeper into that place, as if the store itself wouldn't let me go. I found the cart in aisle 7, fully loaded with boxes to stock. My hands shook as I tore them open, stacking cans on the shelves just to keep moving. The speakers whispered again, "Good boy," just like before. I slammed the can on the shelf. "Where's Mark?" I shouted. Silence. I pushed the cart forward. The lights in aisle 7 dimmed, and a low tapping sound echoed again, this time faster, circling me. The freezer doors slammed open and shut in rapid succession, the sound bouncing through the aisles. I sprinted to the front. The doors wouldn't open. "Finish your shift," the voice commanded, colder now. "Don't fall behind." I turned and saw the figure again, standing just a few aisles away, faceless, motionless, waiting. I raced to the back room, but the layout had changed. The aisles twisted unnaturally, looping back into themselves. No matter where I turned, I found myself back in aisle 3. The photographs were back, more this time. Photos of me panicking, running, hiding. Pinned beneath them was a torn, blood-stained apron. Mark's name tag was still attached. My heart hammered in my chest. A slow, deliberate tap sounded behind me. I spun around. Mark was there, but his body wasn't right. His head hung at an impossible angle, his arms dangling limply. His eyes were completely black. "You're falling behind," he croaked, his mouth moving like it was trying to remember how to speak. He stepped toward me. I backed away. "Finish your shift," he hissed. I turned and ran. I sprinted through the aisles, the store warping around me, the lights flickering in chaotic patterns. The faceless figure moved toward me from the frozen section. Mark's limping body followed close behind. I ducked into the cleaning supply aisle and grabbed the longest mop handle I could find. I swung wildly when Mark reached me, knocking him to the floor. I bolted toward the office again, desperate to find a way out. When I reached the office, the monitors flickered with static, then showed live feeds of me, running, hiding, panicking. The radio hissed, "There's no back door this time." I yanked the phone from the receiver, dead. I flipped the breaker panel, plunging the store into darkness. Silence. I crept out of the office, using the dim glow of my phone to guide me. Tap, tap, tap. The sound was closer now. I turned into the produce section and found a hatch in the floor, half hidden behind the crates, a maintenance crawl space. I pried it open and slid inside, crawling through the suffocating tunnel, the tapping growing louder above me, echoing through the floorboards. I reached the end of the tunnel and emerged behind the dairy section. The lights flickered back on. Standing in front of me was a faceless figure, but now there were more. Dozens of them, emerging from the aisles, from the stockroom, from the crawl spaces. They all wore old Hollow Creek uniforms, their bodies stiff, their heads tilted at impossible angles, their blank faces turned toward me in unison. Mark's voice whispered from every speaker, every radio, every wall. "You're part of the store now." They surged toward me. I sprinted toward the front doors, but the aisles stretched endlessly in front of me. Every turn brought me back to the same aisle. I was trapped. I screamed, swinging the mop handle wildly as I pushed through the crowd of faceless workers. The clock read 3:58 a.m. 2 more minutes, the speakers hissed. I charged to the front, desperate to beat the clock. One of the faceless figures lunged at me, grabbing my ankle. I kicked free, crawling the last few feet toward the doors. The doors remained sealed. "Finish your shift," they whispered. 3:59 a.m. I slammed my fists against the door, tears blurring my vision. "Let me out!" I screamed. The faceless workers stopped in unison, their heads snapping toward the clock. 4 a.m. The doors slid open. Without hesitation, I crawled through and collapsed onto the pavement outside. The whispers stopped. The tapping stopped. The faceless workers vanished. I stumbled to my car, my body trembling. I drove home in silence, my hands shaking on the wheel. When I reached my apartment, I ripped off the store uniform and threw it in the trash. But the next morning, another Polaroid waited under my windshield. A new one, It showed me working in the store, stocking shelves. On the back, a new message. Late again.
You have reached a checkpoint. To save your progress, click the subscribe button. It was supposed to be a quiet drive home. Jenna always avoided the old Whitlock cemetery, taking the long way just to stay clear of its crooked iron gates and rotting statues. But tonight, traffic was backed up for miles, and the shortcut was tempting. She hesitated at the turnoff, the cemetery barely visible under the shroud of fog. With a deep breath, she turned onto the graveyard road. Her headlights cut through the mist, revealing cracked pavement and leaning headstones. She told herself it would only take 5 minutes to cross, 5 minutes to save 30. Halfway through, her car radio sputtered into static. She tapped the screen, but the knobs didn't respond. A low hum filled the car, a sound not coming from the speakers. It reverberated from somewhere deeper. Then she saw him. A man standing by an ancient oak, facing away, his clothes tattered, hair dripping wet despite the dry night. As she passed, the figure slowly turned. His face was obscured by shadow, but she could see his mouth moving. Words she couldn't hear, but somehow understood. You shouldn't be here. A chill climbed her spine. She hit the gas. The road felt endless. Every corner twisted into another, and no matter how far she drove, the cemetery wouldn't end. Panic set in. She made sharp turns, desperate to find the exit, but the gravestones blurred into a spinning carousel of the same decaying markers. Her headlights flickered. The dashboard lights dimmed. Jenna caught movement in the rearview mirror. The man was walking after her, slow, deliberate, but each glance showed him closer. His gait was stiff, unnatural, yet he gained on her with every breath. The whispering began then, from the radio, from the vents, from beneath the seats. You shouldn't be here. Her phone buzzed, a notification from her home security app. Motion detected at front door. She glanced at the screen. A grainy, glitched image appeared. It was the man, standing on her porch, his head tilted, mouth moving in silent whispers. Impossible, she gasped. I'm still here. I haven't left. The image froze. The radio screamed with static, then silence. Her car sputtered to a stop. Jenna jumped out, slamming the door, her breath ragged in the cold air. She ran, weaving between gravestones, not daring to look back, but feeling his gaze burning into her. The cemetery had folded in on itself. No matter which path she took, she circled back to her car. When she reached it again, she found the driver's door ajar. The inside of the car was drenched, water pooling in the seats. The man was sitting in the back, head down, soaked hair hanging over his face. Jenna backed away, trembling. "What do you want?" The man slowly raised his head. "You shouldn't have come." The cemetery fell silent. The hum returned, louder now, suffocating. Her phone buzzed again. Another motion alert. This time, it was a live feed. Jenna watched in horror as the front door of her house creaked open. Wet footprints appeared on her hardwood floors. The camera followed them into her living room, where a soaked figure sat calmly on her couch. The screen glitched, then cut to black. Behind her, the man whispered again, "You shouldn't have come." Jenna spun around, and there was no escape. The cemetery, the house, the man, all of it had collapsed into the same place. The whisper followed her as the cold settled into her bones, as the fog thickened around her, as the world seemed to dissolve into static. Jenna never made it home, but sometimes her porch camera still flickers to life, capturing wet footprints that lead nowhere, accompanied by a single whispered phrase, "You shouldn't have come." In the days that followed Jenna's disappearance, her house grew colder. Neighbors began to hear faint whispers seeping through their walls, always at night, always the same words. The local delivery boy stopped bringing packages to her doorstep after he claimed to see a shadowed figure sitting by the window, dripping wet, staring straight out as if waiting. Jenna's best friend, Rachel, refused to accept her disappearance. She returned to the graveyard, retracing Jenna's path. The same mist coiled around the iron gates, the same low hum vibrating beneath the ground. Rachel's phone buzzed in her pocket, a notification from Jenna's porch camera. Motion detected. When Rachel opened the feed, she saw herself standing at the graveyard entrance, even though she hadn't touched her phone to record. The video showed her looking terrified, as if she were staring at something the camera couldn't see. Her real-time breath caught in her throat as the video version of herself turned and ran, vanishing into the cemetery's thick fog. Rachel spun around. The fog had deepened, the gravestones pressing closer. A voice drifted on the air, a whisper she'd heard too many times on Jenna's voicemail recordings. "You shouldn't have come." The figure of the man appeared before her, his face now visible. A pale, waterlogged visage, his mouth hanging open as water poured endlessly from it, flooding the cracked earth beneath him. Rachel stumbled backward, but the ground gave way, dragging her into the freezing, muddy water pooling at her feet. She clawed at the edges, but unseen hands pulled her deeper. Her phone buzzed one last time, slipping from her grip as it floated atop the water. Another motion alert. Porch camera, motion detected. In the grainy image, two wet figures now sat calmly in Jenna's living room, waiting for someone else to take the shortcut. The screen glitched, then went dark, and the whisper continued, "You shouldn't have come."